Okay, so in this final video, we're going to look at using chatgpt to help us analyze this. So let's upload the file into chatgpt, and you need to remember what the name of the file name was, which I forgot, so it's called App Store. Okay, and I always like to tell ChatGPT what it is. Okay, and then I'm going to tell them I want to explore between in-app purchases and game rating. So let's see what ChatGPT does with this information. So it's going to go ahead and analyze. So it's telling us what the relevant columns are. And it says that we can do the following things. Okay, we can start cleaning the data. We can start doing statistical analysis. Let's start with EDA. Looking at box plot. Okay, so you've seen all of these things. We haven't seen the t-test, which you might have seen in a stat class. But it's going to actually go ahead and compute these things for us, as you can see. But the most important thing is that it's actually going to be giving us some code. So let's just look at this very carefully. Okay, so this is the box plot, okay, of data. Here it's showing us the distributions. Okay, so this is a histogram chart, okay, of in-app purchases, without in-app purchases. Okay, what we should do is, of course, we should ask for code in Python to do all of that. Okay, and so let's just look at doing that. Okay, so show me a Python code for creating a histogram that compares in-app purchases. Okay, that compares user rating by in-app purchases. So let's see this code. Okay, so here's the code, and the key thing is that it's going to, it's assuming, of course, clean data. We don't need to worry too much about that right now, so let's just use our standard data set. The key thing, of course, is that in this code it hasn't read in the file. You can see it hasn't read in the file. So let's just copy this code here to our data set, and let's just go ahead and do that. So here we have the code that ChatGPT has generated, and then of course we need to read in the file again. And so let's read in the file by just copying and pasting the code. So here we have that. And it wants it to be called df cleaned. So let's call it df cleaned. Okay, and let's see if this actually successfully plots the histogram. So we run it, and it does not successfully plot the histogram. So let's see what the error is. Okay, key error, has in-app purchases. Okay, so you see that it thinks that has in-app purchases is a column name, and we know it's not a column name. We've actually looked at that before. So there's a different column name for it. So what we can do is we can print out the column names. So let's do that. df clean columns. And it's actually called in-app purchases. Okay, so it's called in-app purchases, not has in-app purchases. In-app purchases, in-app purchases. Now, the other thing is, if we look at df cleaned, head has in-app purchases, we need to determine what kind of data is actually has in-app purchases. In-app purchases is not a number, not a number, not a number, okay? So it's not clear that it's going to actually work, but let's try it and see if we get a different error. Okay, so now we run it. It still gave this has in-app purchases. I don't think it actually ran it. Okay, so now we run it. Okay, and now it says no artist with label. Okay, so we now have a chart, but we don't actually have a chart with any useful information in it. So average user rating, distribution of ratings. Okay, so here we have both the histogram plot and in-app purchases. So what we should do then is we should figure out what this df cleaned in-app purchases looks like. Okay, so there's no in-app purchases, so I typed it in incorrectly. It's capital in-app purchases. Okay, so you see that we have an enormous number of nans, okay? And then we have this thing that is 9.99, 4.99, etc., okay? So this is very weird, okay? And so this data is messed up, okay? So it looks like what we actually have inside of in-app purchases is 1.99, 0.99 strings with various things, okay? And what we don't have is what it is expecting. And so since it doesn't have what it's expecting, you know, it's expecting a 1 or a 0. Okay? And so we need to go back to ChatGPT now and say, that code is incorrect. So that the column name is in-app purchases, not has in-app purchases, and this column needs to be cleaned so it has a 1 or a 0. Please write code to do both of these things. So let's see what happens now. Uh-oh. Okay, and so now ChatGPT is very depressed. Okay, and so it tells us it can't do more. Okay, so here's about how to clean the column. Okay, so again, this is good. Okay, it's giving us a binary indicator. Let's see. So this is not doing very well. Okay, so let's see if this makes sense. Okay, so let's run this code. Okay, so it's actually wants to keep has in-app purchases. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so it's going to create this new column, and then we're going to see if it successfully converts it into 1 or 0 in a way that makes sense. Okay, so df cleaned. That's the data set that we're working with. Okay, and now we're going to just look at df cleaned head. And let's see if it's looking like it makes sense. Okay, so here we have a bunch of zeros, which is very good. Okay, and then let's see if we can find something that has something that is a 1. So let's see. df cleaned has in-app purchases unique. Let's see if there's actually a 1. Okay, so great. So there are some things with 1. So now we can go back and run our code, and it wanted it to have has in-app purchases for some reason. Okay, and now we have another bug. If we have a key this is yet another key error with df cleaned. Is it called has in-app purchases? Has in-app purchases. So has in-app purchases. Let's see. Okay, so this is typically because it doesn't have a key that's called has in-app purchases. So let's see if we can identify why it thinks it doesn't have in-app purchases. It's called an error in the typo in the variable name, but used games instead. Erase all instances. Is that true that we have games here? I don't think so. So the problem here is that we actually blew out df cleaned. Okay, so we need to move this up here. So we were just reloading it. So we can run it now and then rerun this code here. Rerun this code here. And now the df cleaned head is actually correct. Okay, ones and zeros. Okay, now we rerun it. Okay, and now we have this beautiful chart, and we can compare this chart now to ChatGPT's chart here. And we see that at least it looks similar. Whether or not it is actually identical, we can check out later. And now we've created this wonderful chart in just 12 minutes, histogram chart comparing these two things. Okay, so that's how to use ChatGPT to help you create these exploratory data analyses.